Hey, are you ready to grow your business? You have checked out the number one resource for business leaders, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and managers. And we're going to teach you how to grow and scale your business with real actionable steps. There's no fluff in this podcast. It's just good advice. Check out this episode. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is with Julie Swift. She's a vice president at Waypoint. More importantly, though, I would call her even the queen of culture. She probably wouldn't call herself that because she's too humble, but she's going to talk about what does it mean to really be a culture champion in your business. Stay tuned. Here comes your good advice. Hey, thanks for checking out another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. I have someone on the show today who I've been waiting to get on for quite a while. It's someone that I met really just a few months ago, and we've had just a couple of random interactions since then. Her name's Julie Swift. She's the vice president of food service at Waypoint. She's an incredible leader in her own right. She really understands culture and management. She also has a killer perspective on sales. You're really going to enjoy this episode today. Julie, thank you for being here today.
Hey, thank you, Blake. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, first of all, where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from my home office in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, now how's Missouri today?
Well, you know what? Missouri's on lockdown. That's how Missouri is today. So along with a lot of other people across the country that are working out of home offices, that's where I am.
So talk to me about, so for the listeners, this episode is being recorded. Today is March 27th. It's a Friday. We're seeing many states actually locking down. Julie, a lot of people are jumping into this remote work, this sort of home office style. Do you typically work from home? Are you comfortable with something like that? I mean, what's that look like for you?
I typically do work from home. However, I travel a great deal in my position. So I've had to move the yoga mat into the office because I'm not quite used to being here as often. And I think my husband is really looking forward to the day when things can resume to normal, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Now, it feels like there's people so I work from home myself. A lot of fellow entrepreneurs, business owners that I know also work from home. You have a large amount of the workforce today who, because of the stay-at-home order, maybe they work for a non-essential business, they're also working from home. And I wonder how many people are kind of trying to figure out this structure of their day. How do you actually stay productive and work from home? I don't know if you saw the video of the woman using Zoom for the first time.
Yes.
And she went to the bathroom didn't realize her video camera was on. So there's a lot of growing pains right now. You got any advice for people who are in this journey for the first time?
Gosh, based on personal experience, I can say that my best advice is to let the other people in your home know that you're on a video conference with 174 other people when your husband leans in to give you a kiss goodbye and you're in the middle of presenting. So he immediately caught, the screen in his peripheral vision and was mortified. And so then he just kind of leaned in and waved. And but no, you know what? Such a great point. I have actually even considered putting a short YouTube video together and just saying, hey, here's some tips on how to, transition into a work from home. I think natural light is really important. I think the things that make you comfortable and inspire you, if that is a diffuser or if that is a vase of fresh flowers, whatever that might look like, that would help you be more productive and stay focused. I think that's important. I also think it's really important to get out of the house, walk, get fresh air, sit down at a different place than your desk to have lunch or to have a snack or an afternoon tea or whatever that might be. So my best advice would just be, it's probably going to look different for everybody.
That's right.
So make that space comfortable and make it uniquely you.
Hearing your story about your husband reminds me of that old YouTube video of the guy presenting on Skype, and his kid like opens the door and crawls in behind him, and like the mom just like whirlwinds in and grabs the baby. Have you seen that?
I have seen it.
It's
I have seen it.
Kind of the fun of all this, though, is there's another level of authenticity here. I mean, people, in some ways, relationships become all the more powerful and meaningful when you sort of strip away I don't want to say strip away the professionalism. I mean, I think you're still fully able to be professional and cordial and tactful, via Zoom or what have you. But there's a little bit of a level of relatability, I think, that's happening through remote work and through Zoom and all these other, social media channels. It's kind of a silver lining in my eyes. It's allowing people almost to connect more intentionally, where the alternative is a lot of times you have an office full of people that never really engage or really have a conversation.
True. I so agree with that. I think if I think about my personal life and my business life, I've been using Skype or Zoom with the video side of it for months now. And that's really because my entire team is remote and I want us to see each other. But we've really adopted that more in the workplace. But even with my friends, we have, I don't know if anyone's heard of Marco Polo.
Oh, yeah. My wife's all about it.
Yeah, I'm all about it too. So my friends, just this morning we were saying, hey, we're all going to start our day out with a happy dance. And so we put set the phone up and we put our favorite song on, or a song that we thought we could jam to. Mine was Benny and the Jets. And we did our happy dance and we passed that around, and it just provides us, a level of connectivity. Mm-hmm. That, like you said, is probably a little bit more deliberate. Sometimes it's fun and goofy and funny. And sometimes it's that you want to be eye to eye, face to face with the person you're talking to. You want them to know they have your attention and that you're listening. So I appreciate that about it.
Well, and it's even for me when I'm recording podcast interviews. I mean, the podcast doesn't go, I have a backlog of videos that'll eventually go on YouTube. Yeah. But even recording an episode, for me, it feels like the quality of the episode is totally different when I can actually see the person and engage with them, as opposed to someone who maybe calls in or, what have you.
Totally agree.
What about leaders right now who they're leading remote teams for the first time? And because I'm sure there's some leaders who are all levels of panicky in terms of, can I trust my people? How do I know they're still being productive? How do I manage someone who isn't directly in the office? There's even some businesses who, really their belief system's being challenged right now. I think about the Yahoo former CEO, who totally eliminated remote work entirely when she came in and said it doesn't work. You have bosses right now who deeply believe that remote work is not effective, and yet their team has to be remote right now. Any advice for that leader who's apprehensive or wondering, how do I actually manage these people well, especially since you already manage people remotely? What does that look like for you?
Gosh, I want to be careful not to insult anybody who is having that rush of emotion about, oh my gosh, can I really trust people in this environment? And so I don't want to make this a criticism on that kind of a reaction. But what I would say is when you see parents whose children are behaving badly, it's a bad reflection on the parents. It's not really a bad reflection on the children. And so many times if you can fix the problem with the parent, then you can fix the problem with the children. So I guess you know where I'm going here.
Yeah,
but
now this is a challenging thing to say. It's like when the boss complains about their employees and you think, well, maybe it's the employee.
Right.
Maybe it's not.
Yeah. So I really do believe that this is a fast forward to what the future is probably going to look like with remote work. So the first thing I would say is find a place of peace and embrace it, because even post COVID-19, I'm not sure work will ever completely return to the non-remoteness that it was before. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I would say is if you don't trust your people to be productive, then you don't have the right people. And probably the third thing I would say is check yourself. Make sure that this is not something, because look, we've all had work experiences that have either had a positive influence on us or a negative influence on us. So if you're carrying the baggage of a negative influence, then I would say, work through that, try to overcome that, and recognize that the vast majority of people want to do, I truly believe this, want to do the best job they can. They want to succeed. Maybe bring them a little bit tighter into the vision of where we're all going and what their part of getting there is. I've found that with people who I feel like are not maybe producing at the level that I think they're capable of, I'll spend a little bit of extra time helping them understand how significant what they're doing is to the whole. And sometimes that can be very, very powerful, not only for that individual, but for you as a leader in having that conversation.
And I think the power of that insight is that sometimes leaders, they view it the wrong way, in the sense of they see it out of frustration of, why doesn't this person see the big picture? Right. And it's kind of like, well, why would they? They don't have your level of visibility or control or responsibility. All they know is literally what's right in front of them. And so I think that's a powerful insight, helping someone really see the whole picture and knowing why their work is so important. Listening to you, and for our listeners, I've had quite a few conversations with Julie, and Julie, you have such an incredible insight on culture, on leadership, on management. It's very easy to talk to you and know that, what your perspective is going to be literally right on with really what I think is the right perspective on leadership. Talk to me a little bit about, who is Julie Swift, and really what's your journey been like? We don't have a lot of time. I have so many things I really want to dig in on our conversation, but I got to know a little bit of the bio. I got to learn a little bit of the backstory, because as I talk to you, I'm like, man, this person is obviously a really great leader, obviously really cares about her people. I'm sure your journey's been incredible. Give the listeners a little bit of insight. What has your career looked like?
Gosh, thank you 10 times over for all of those absolutely fantastic comments. I don't know that I see myself exactly as you see me, but gosh, I wish everybody I came into contact with saw me that way. So thank you. Thanks so much. You know what? I feel like careers in general, and mine is no different. It's kind of a patchwork. And so some of those pieces are pieces that we've had to put together ourselves. And some of those pieces are pieces that we are the way we are because of bad leaders and not wanting to be like that, and making a very conscious decision about not ever making someone feel the way you were once made to feel. The most significant thing for me is probably collaboration. If I had to say there's one word that has driven my career, I was raised by a dad that valued my opinion, that never gave me the answer to a single, and in my Texas twang, cotton picking thing. And so therefore, I think built a mind and a confidence that you can find ways and you can find the answers. And if it feels right, then it probably is right. And if it feels wrong, then it's definitely wrong. So I think I've had that sort of moral compass to go off of, and I'm eternally grateful for a dad that, also didn't recognize that a girl was different than a boy in terms of what could be accomplished. I can remember at one point having a conversation with him about being an astronaut. So there were never any limitations on what could be achieved. I see a lot of young women and young men in the workforce today who are so hungry for that kind of support. And a lot of times when we work our way into leadership, we have this belief that we're all of a sudden supposed to revert to this completely separate and different set of rules because now we're in leadership. My air quotes just went up. And so what I would say is everything you know to be a great leader, you probably learned on the playground in the first grade. So, it's the common things. Don't exclude anyone. Be thoughtful, be kind, don't shame someone, don't put someone down. So I think when you do, and you step into leadership and you have to really check yourself. You have to really stop and think, what do you want to portray? And you've got to be deliberate about that. So if I have to say, hey, what does the bio look like? It's a hot mess. That's what the bio looks like. I've made so many mistakes, I can't even count them all. But what I know is that I used every one of those to do a little self-correct, to get me on the right path. I truly believe the path to success is paved with failure. And anybody who's ever invented anything knows that too. So I absolutely and unwaveringly believe that if you can find a company to work for that allows you to make those mistakes, you're going to grow in ways that you've never even imagined possible. So that's what I've been truly blessed with, is I think an upbringing that set the stage for confidence and kindness and transparency, and a set of employers that allowed me to grow. And when the opportunity to grow came to an end, then I left and went somewhere else where I could grow. So it looks different for everybody. Unstereotyped leadership is my favorite hashtag these days.
There's so much to unpack though of your story, because I'm a few things that come to mind. First of all, even that last bit you just said, talking about when the growth opportunities really stopped. And I know you mean that even beyond like a literal title, but like growing as a professional. You made the decision to move on somewhere else. And a lot of people, when they are in a job where they don't feel that happening, and yet they are very, they're inactive, they're passive, they're waiting. I just talked to someone who they said they're miserable in their job. And I said, what are you going to do about it? And he said, well, I think I'm going to work here for 5 more years. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's an eternity.
Oh, that's miserable.
I think it's insightful that you are willing to pull the levers you need to pull to move yourself forward. The other thing that I think is really interesting about your story is it's interesting to me, you made this comment of how, leadership really isn't that complicated. I mean, it's hard, it's challenging, but like how you treat people and how you lead people, it's not like we're solving calculus here. The things that you mentioned, we're talking about empathy. We're talking about treating someone with human dignity and respect and seeing ways to promote them and help them grow and develop. And yet, even though these concepts are really simple, it's amazing to me how there are people in leadership who just cannot, for whatever reason, either they overcomplicate it or they just don't understand what it means to be a leader. And it's kind of like, you've probably heard the cliche of like the leader versus a manager. The leader kind of, and there's all the things that follow that, and then the manager and all the things that follow that. Why does it seem like this concept of leadership is so challenging for some people to really, I guess, get, or for it to click, or for them to kind of really see, oh, that's a leader, not how maybe I've always done it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can, speak from personal experience when I say that the first leadership position I had terrified me. And I was terrified by the fact that I might make a mistake. And then when I started to realize that I'm absolutely, positively, 100% definitely going to make a mistake, then I just had to think about how am I going to handle the mistake when I make it. And how I'm going to handle it is I'm going to say, Blake, wow, I was wrong there. I made a mistake. And it's in that you develop trust, that you show empathy. I'm not saying go out there and on purpose make a mistake, but boy, when you get a couple of those under your belt, especially with individual team members, it's a little bit easier to admit a mistake, I feel like, to a group and go, hey gang, we could have done better here, and whatever it might be. But when you go one-on-one with somebody, where you say, hey, I failed you here. This is what I should have done. There is such great power in that, not only for the leader, but for the recipient of that message. And that's what we've got to be willing to do. We've got to be willing to be authentic. We've got to be willing to be real. We've got to be willing to admit that my form of leadership might not look anything like yours because we're different people. And somehow we've created this stereotypical leadership model. I feel that men see this just as much as women do. There's kind of this idea of, what color shirt you're going to wear and what color tie you're going to wear and whatever kind of facial hair you're going to have or not have. And for women, it's power accessories and power colors. And, oh gosh, you've got to, spend this on a suit, or you've maybe got to get Botox if you're starting to get wrinkles because somebody might think you're older than you are, whatever it is. It's like, forget all that. Forget all that. What I know is that people connect with the most genuine, authentic version of you. That's what people are going to connect with. And so they'll know that it comes from that place. When you also get in that vortex of making a decision, a tough decision that you've really got to make, you can lean on that as a leader. If you've been out there, and nothing wrong with reading leadership books, I've read probably a dozen in the last 6 months. But, what I would say is that find the parts of those leadership models that are you and adopt those. Look to other people. Certainly look to, read and understand as much as you can about leadership. But if you're doing someone else in that, then when times get tough, you're going to find you're not there anymore. You're going to be trying to go, okay, well, what would, Simon Sinek do? Or what would Brene Brown do? Or, whatever that might be. And those are helpful to help prop up the parts of yourself that are already there. So that's what I would say. I would just say that if you're being authentically you and you're genuinely leading from the person that you are, it will begin to come natural, and it will grow and become more powerful with every day that goes by.
Well, and not everyone is, and I guess this is probably part of like the beauty of the journey is you're sort of like becoming, in being more authentic and genuine, you're kind of coming to terms with who you are and your skill set and your value system and what you bring to the table and how that may be totally different from what someone else brings to the table. I think it's hard sometimes for people to really, I don't want to say look in the mirror in sort of like a negative sense, but really to understand who they are. And I think that's why it's easy sometimes to rely on sort of these superficial, like, oh, that's a power tie, or that's, these things that we think give us credibility and authority. But really with our people, I mean, it doesn't move the needle at all.
No.
So, and it's almost, it's kind of a similar conversation a little bit in the sales world. I feel like in the sales world, a lot of salespeople are really, from the very first impression, are really trying to either create a persona. I'm personally on a mission against all digital marketers, which not actually all digital marketers, because I'm a digital marketer myself in some ways, but especially like the Facebook guru style marketer where, you have this growing culture of salespeople out there who are very much into the persona they can present to you and the exclusivity that comes with working with you and all of these things, rather than having like a legitimate, and maybe I'm a terrible salesperson, I don't know, but for me, it's just like, I feel like my approach has always been I'm just going to be authentic. This is what I can do. This is what it costs. This is what it is. Talk to me a little bit about, I know you're sort of, I was looking at your LinkedIn bio. I know you've been sort of a sales guru or a sales master. I don't want to say guru. Talk to me a little bit about sales. Like, how do you sell well? How do you be a good salesperson? What does that look like?
Oh, thanks for asking. Definitely a very strong passion of mine on the selling side. I think the first thing that I always tell salespeople when they say, "Hey, what can you tell me? What advice can you give me about selling?" I say, "Hey, you know what? I want you to spend 24 hours. I want you to look at what all these different salespeople around you are doing, and I want you to not do any of that." So that's really the first piece of it. The next piece of it is that selling really requires a deep understanding of where the customer is, what they're looking for, what's important to them, what they need from you. So I would say in a sales, perfect sales world, you're calling on somebody, let's say maybe for the first time. And I kind of just call it the empty bag. And that is that you walk in with the empty bag, whether you're calling on them in an office environment, whether you are in the industry I'm in, which is food service, and you're walking into, a restaurant or a college or whatever it might be. And, your job is to sell a certain set of items, and you want to do a good job for your company, and you want to project a great image. Walk in with an empty bag and sell absolutely nothing but yourself. Ask the questions. How can I help you? What are you looking for? Be there with the answers. Be ready with the answers. Where you don't know the answers, admit you don't know the answers, but go find them. The vast majority of salespeople kind of maybe come across a little bit like they're on the hustle. There'll be plenty of time to hustle once you establish that relationship with the customer. And the way to establish that relationship is to have them think of you as a consultant relative to their business. My probably best selling story is I had a big contract account that I called on, and I had been trying to get in to their culinary department to work with their chefs for almost a year. And I had a corporate chef that I finally got an appointment for myself and the corporate chef to go in and meet with this customer. And on the very day, at the very hour that we were about to have our shining moment, they had something just come unhinged in their business, and they needed to develop about 15 or 20 dessert recipes. Well, at the time, I sold condiments. I don't know about you, but I'm a good salesperson, but I can't quite find my way into the hot fudge with the condiments that I was selling. So the executive chef came out and was nice enough to say, "Look, Julie, I know you've been trying to get this appointment for a long time. We've had something blow up back here. We're going to have to move this." So I said, "Hey, look, chef, I completely understand the situation, but I happen to have a chef right here. And I happen to do pretty good in an apron, can pull things out of the cooler. Let us jump in and help you." He said, "Look, I am so tempted to take you up on that, but I have to tell you, none of your products are going to end up in these recipes." And I said, "I don't care. It's not why I offered. I'm here to help." So I can tell you that you don't always get that immediate opportunity to do something like that. But I had to go back and tell my boss that I spent 3 days at that operation and didn't sell a cotton picking thing. But I will tell you this, in the months and years to come, I blew the top off the numbers. And it's not because I'm a great salesperson. It's because the relationship put me in a position to be able to do something in a time of desperate need. So, if you can find those places where you can be more of a consultant and you can be more of a help, even if it's not in your wheelhouse, that will always be remembered and appreciated.
What you just shared is so powerful because you're talking, and it's something that salespeople really struggle with. It's this concept of how do I really truly give value? in an altruistic way, give without expecting in return. And I've realized that especially online, people don't understand what that expression means of giving value, to where someone will say, hey, I want to give you some value today, buy this product from me, which, buying from you is not getting value from you. It's me giving value to you because I'm paying you.
Right.
What you're talking about is it's giving, expecting nothing in return. And it almost speaks to your character and your integrity a little bit, where that customer now knows the values that your business stands for and what you represent. And honestly, another thing I love about your story is you show a really incredible amount of patience, where it feels like today's salesperson is so here and now focused. And in some ways you need that, right? I mean, in some ways you need, not every deal needs to take 2 years to close, but there is what feels like a lack of patience, where it's kind of like when you go to a networking event. And you go to this networking event and right off the bat, someone's like, it's like they have a bag of cards and they like throw it over you and they, hey, buy from me and here's this. And we've kind of lost our patience a little bit to build and nurture these relationships, when realistically it's those relationships that are infinitely more profitable to our business than any of those one-off sales. And so I just love how, you're giving a perspective on business and sales that I think, and this is what's so funny about my brand, is these things are so common sense, and yet they aren't always implemented for whatever reason.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think part of it really does start with leadership, though, because I recently implemented a inside sales team at the company that I work for now, which is Waypoint. I implemented an inside sales team, and I wanted a combination of different types of people, but I definitely wanted someone who had done telemarketing, so that even though this was nothing like a telemarketing position, I wanted them to have good verbal and communication skills without, being seen. I wanted them to be articulate and, to have some knowledge about the industry and what's going on. But I literally had to untrain them to close the sale. When I told them that their goal was to establish a meaningful connection, I almost felt like I was describing a dating site. But at the end of the day, it is really about building that confidence, because when you talk to somebody on the phone, there's that thing in the back of their mind going, okay, what are you going to try to sell me now? And it really isn't about that. It's about saying, hey, how can we help you? Is this the time of the year you would expect to change your menu? We've got this really cool tool that would help you determine what's really popular and trending in your market. That doesn't have anything to do with anything we sell. Mm-hmm. So this idea of, for lack of a better term, meaningful connection. But I also think there's a huge responsibility in leadership not to push people into numbers. It's so short-sighted to say, hey, this is all I expect you to accomplish. What could people accomplish? And I know, look, we're all running companies here. We've got to be able to say, hey, we've got to succeed in some way or another. But should the guy or gal that just started be the same as the guy or gal who's been calling on the same customers for 10 years? Probably not.
Right.
And, what kind of parameters are we putting on there? My first parameter is always, build a good stable of meaningful connections. Do that. And then we'll worry about product training. We'll worry about all those things later. But, and this one person told me, she said, this sounds like a dating service. No, it's business dating. Let's just call it business dating. But if you think about it in that way, and in the extent that you would go to make a friendship, I mean, would you make a friendship and 5 minutes later, or on the second time you meet that person, try to, sell them your Aunt Mary's peach cobbler? Probably not. So I think it's important that you really establish those relationships, and that knowing what is right for one person and thinking you have it all figured out is probably the most dangerous part of that walk. Oh, well, this person who's in this kind of business told me this, so it must be that way for everybody. There might be some commonalities, but people want to know you're really listening to them and hearing what they say. And when you come back with what they've asked for or what they need, or give them some ideas around what they spoke, there's so much power in that, so much more powerful than selling three things out of the bag.
Well, it takes time to build trust,
Really.
but when it's there, I mean, that's the answer to a return customer, which the data tells us a return customer is infinitely more profitable than any new one-off customer. And, it's interesting. I love what you're talking about of, really having conversations with people without trying to sell them right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a woman who she's in the insurance agency, and she was asking about how she can do a better job of retaining her customers. And I said, you should call your customers and just check in, just see how they're doing. And she was like, and do what? And I was like, that's it. Just call
and
them.
Check in.
Yeah, just check in. Because think about it. The only time you ever hear from your insurance agent is when, it's the end of the year and it's time to re-up for the next year. And it's, that they're calling to sell you something. And so how can you stand out and differentiate yourself? It's seeking those authentic, meaningful relationships, which take time.
It is. And I think it's also important to think about, breaking the world of clutter that they're going through right now. And in this very moment, a lot of our people are writing handwritten notes just because people's email boxes are being inundated and people's social media is being, blasted away. And I'm a digital marketer too, so I fall into that as well. But I truly believe that if you think about what that authentic message is, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, like I said. But if you think about what that customer really needs to hear, what would be reassuring, even if it's just, I was thinking about you, want you to know I was thinking about you. The handwritten note is I bet it's going to make a comeback.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's funny you say that because that was the second piece of advice, was to write handwritten notes to all of our customers. So, I have this podcast and then I have my customers, and I send handwritten notes to everyone except for you. The only one I didn't send a note to because I tried to get your address and then I couldn't get it from you. And then I was like, well, I don't want to come across as a stalker. And so
I don't remember you asking, but if you ask me again, I'll give it to you.
Okay. Well, there's power though. And it's even less about the fact that you did a handwritten note. There's power. It's power of intentionality. It lets someone know. It's kind of like whenever you get one in the mail and you open it up and you can tell it's been pre-printed or like there's a printed signature versus the one that's an actual. Right. When a customer feels like they've been individualized, like, wow, I individually matter to your business, it goes a long way. It means a lot for people. So I think you're spot on.
Right. Thank you.
Julie, we are out of time today. It just flows by.
It
flies
did.
by, excuse me. What's the best way, especially people who are listening, maybe they want to get some perspective on leadership. Maybe they just want to follow you more closely. What's the best way for people to do that?
Probably through LinkedIn. I have folks reach out to me on LinkedIn on the regular and get inbox, and I answer every single one of them. I've been in the position that a lot of them are in now and really looking for something to grab hold of and to further develop with. And so if I can be that is the exact reason why I'm doing this podcast, because I really do want to be able to help people if I can. I might not, we might not match up and I might not be the right kind of help for you, but I feel like if I'm not, I could maybe suggest someone who would be. So LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me.
Great. Julie, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. For the listeners, I will put Julie's LinkedIn profile link in this episode description. Absolutely give her a follow and follow her content. And hey, if you're a first-time listener to the podcast, what the heck you waiting on? You need to hit that subscribe button. We're continuing to bring you some great guests and good advice on the regular. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a 5-star review. That's all we have for you this week. We'll catch you later. See ya.